In 2000, an entire kindergarten class vanished from their classroom in less than 10 minutes. No witnesses. No alarms. Just 20 empty chairs, and a janitor who saw something everyone else ignored. 5 years later, a discovery beneath the school exposed the truth. But nothing could prepare the town for what they found next. Before we begin today's chilling true crime mystery, I want to ask you to take a second and like, share, and subscribe, so you never miss any of our weekly deep dives into the world's most disturbing unsolved disappearances. Your support keeps these stories alive, and ensures the victims are never forgotten. Now, imagine an ordinary school morning, bright, calm, predictable. Teachers preparing lessons, parents heading to work, and 20 small kindergartners coloring, laughing, and learning their alphabet. Then imagine that within 10 minutes, that classroom became a silent tomb, desks empty, crayons scattered, backpacks left behind. And every single child was gone. No witnesses. No exit. No explanation. For 5 long years, the city blamed the teachers, the parents, the police, even the children themselves. But the truth, the horrifying, impossible truth, was buried deep beneath the school, in a place no one bothered to look. Until one man finally did. In Pine Hollow, Michigan, the year 2000 was supposed to mark growth for the small, struggling town. A new lumber mill had opened. Families were moving in again. And Maplebrook Elementary had just welcomed its largest kindergarten class in over a decade. No one paid much attention to Harold Lorne. At 58, Harold was a janitor, soft-spoken, hunched, and nearly invisible after 27 years of mopping the same hallways. The teachers saw him as part of the building, not a man. The principal saw him as cheap labor. The parents rarely saw him at all. But the children loved him. Especially Room 1K, the kindergarten class taught by the endlessly cheerful Mrs. Hinton. The students would bring Harold scribbled drawings, ask him to open their snack containers, and tell him stories about dinosaurs and imaginary pets while he polished the floors. Harold never forgot little Avery Wells, who always wore mismatched socks and believed every broom was actually a sleeping dragon. Nor quiet Eli Monroe, who whispered the answers even when he was right. Nor Maggie Torres, who collected shiny rocks and insisted Harold inspect each one. They were small, chaotic sparks of joy in a world that had given Harold little of it. On the morning of October 9, 2000, Harold noticed something strange. A man he didn't recognize, wearing a Pine Hollow School District maintenance badge, was speaking to Mrs. Hinton at her classroom doorway. He carried a clipboard, looked official, and talked fast. Mrs. Hinton's smile faltered. She gestured to her class. He pointed down the hallway. Harold felt a prickle at the back of his neck. Something about the man's confidence, the way he guided Mrs. Hinton like he owned the building, struck him as wrong. But he was just the janitor. He kept moving. 10 minutes later, Maplebrook Elementary's front office called for Harold. The secretary looked pale. "Harold, can you check room 1K? Mrs. Hinton hasn't returned her attendance sheet." He walked to the kindergarten room, opened the door, and froze. The classroom was empty. Every chair, every desk, every child, gone. Only a single crayon rolled slowly across the floor, as if someone had dropped it moments before. At first, no one truly panicked. Small towns resist panic, they prefer denial. The principal insisted the class had gone on a last-minute nature walk. The secretary insisted Mrs. Hinton must have signed them out. The police, when called an hour later, insisted it was a miscommunication. Then the first parent arrived. Then another. And another. By 3 p.m., 20 frantic families were crowding the school entrance, demanding answers that didn't exist. But suddenly, miraculously, answers appeared. The school's attendance binder showed neat notes next to each child's name. Released early, district testing study. Parent pickup authorized. Field exercise supervised. Every child accounted for. On paper. The problem? Not a single note was in Mrs. Hinton's handwriting. And she was missing too. Officer Raymond French found Harold standing outside room 1K, trembling. "What did you see today?" the officer asked. Harold described the mysterious maintenance worker, the one with the clipboard, the badge, the confidence. The officer sighed. "Probably a district contractor. We'll get it sorted." He didn't write a single note. Didn't check maintenance records. Didn't investigate the classroom. To him, Harold's words were background noise from a forgettable man. A man whose testimony held no weight. The children were officially labeled missing due to miscommunication. The investigation stalled within hours. And somewhere, deep beneath the school, something hummed. Maplebrook Elementary was old, built in 1959, expanded in the early 70s, and neglected ever since. Harold knew every pipe, every vent, every flickering light. So when he heard a metallic clank beneath the floor that night, a sound that did not belong, it chilled him. He followed the noise down to the sub-basement, a place most staff didn't even know existed. The school's ancient boiler sat there, huge, rusting, and always too hot. The air felt heavy, thick, suffocating. Harold noticed three things instantly. 1. Dust footprints, small ones, leading behind the boiler. 2. A pink plastic hair clip stuck on a pipe bracket. 3. A new padlock on the crawlspace hatch. The lock didn't belong. He would know. He had changed every lock in the building. Then he heard it. A sound he would never forget. A faint, shaky exhale. Almost like a child trying not to cry. It disappeared as quickly as it came. Harold staggered backward, heart pounding, and ran straight to Officer French again. Again, French dismissed him. "Old buildings make sounds. Kids lose things all the time. There is no crawlspace under that boiler, Harold." But Harold knew there was. He had cleaned it years ago. He walked home that night feeling a crushing truth. If the children were alive, if they were somewhere in that school, no one in power cared enough to find them. Grief and guilt gnawed at Harold. He bought a cheap spiral notebook from a corner store, sat at his kitchen table, and began writing. Everything he had seen. Everything the police ignored. Everything he suspected but could not prove. Night after night, he investigated alone. He documented. At the unauthorized van parked by the maintenance doors at 3 a.m. At the industrial cleaner smell near the boiler room. At the late-night humming that didn't match the boiler's rhythm. A trail of glitter behind the cafeteria freezer. Footprints, too small to belong to any adult. No one listened. No one cared. Not until Harold told the one person who might understand. His granddaughter, Lena, a sharp-witted forensic science major home for winter break. She didn't laugh. She didn't dismiss him. She read every page of the notebook. "This isn't nothing, Grandpa," she whispered. "This is a pattern." For the first time in months, Harold felt hope. Lena urged him to gather evidence, real, undeniable evidence. So Harold used his Christmas savings to buy an old microcassette recorder. 2 nights later, he placed it behind the boiler, deep in the crawlspace grate, and pressed record. What the tape captured was faint, shaky, distorted, but unmistakable. At 1:13 a.m., a metallic door scraped open. At 1:14, a low male voice muttered something. At 1:15, a child whimpered. At 1:16, another child whispered, "Please." Then a clatter. A stifled cry. And the humming began. Loud. Mechanical. Terrifying. Harold and Lena sat frozen as the tape clicked to a stop. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't a wandering class. This wasn't an accident. Someone had taken the children. Someone was using the school, and someone powerful was protecting them. They couldn't go to the police. Not after 5 years of neglect, denial, and humiliation. So Lena contacted Marissa Hale, a Detroit investigative reporter known for taking down corrupt officials and exposing hidden crimes. Marissa listened to the tape, read the notebook, examined the evidence. She didn't blink. "Pack a bag," she told her team. "We're going to Pine Hollow." Her article dropped 3 days later. The Maplebrook 20. 5 years of lies, silence, and a school that hid a nightmare. The country exploded. Media trucks flooded Pine Hollow. Parents screamed at city officials. And for the first time since the children vanished, the school was forced to open its sealed sub-basement. On a bitter January morning in 2005, police, forensic experts, journalists, and grieving families gathered around the rusted boiler room hatch. Harold stood among them, shaking. The forensic team cut the lock. Crowbars pried the hatch open. Cold, stale air rushed out. Then the flashlights lowered, and collective horror froze the room. Beneath the boiler, in a cramped chamber of dirt, pipes, and rotting insulation, lay 20 small skeletons, pressed together in a space not meant for humans. Alongside them, melted toys, shrunken backpacks, crumbled worksheets, and a single glitter-covered shoe. Maggie's shoe. A wave of screaming broke through the silence as parents collapsed. Reporters cried. Officers backed away in shock. Harold dropped to his knees. 5 years of guilt crashed into him like a tidal wave. They were here. They had been here all along. And no one listened. The arrests came swiftly. A corrupt school board member, a maintenance contractor with a violent record, and a district supervisor who had been forging documents for years. Their motives were twisted, monstrous, and rooted in greed and exploitation. But the community never recovered. How could they? A memorial now stands where Maplebrook Elementary once stood. 20 names carved into stone. 20 children who trusted the adults meant to protect them. 20 lives lost because everyone ignored the janitor. Harold visits the memorial every week. He leaves a flower on each name. He never forgave himself. But parents tell him the same thing every time. You were the only one who cared. You were the only one who tried. To this day, when the wind blows through the empty lot, some say they hear faint laughter, as if the children finally found the freedom that was stolen from them.